Good morning, Devils fans. We're going to slide right into this one, as today's spotlight is on Akira Schmid. Born May 12, 2000 in Bern, Switzerland, to his dad, Andreas, who is, by all accounts, a fairly big weeb, or at least somewhat obsessed with Japanese culture, who also ran a karate studio. Both his mom and dad were obsessed intensely with karate. His dad still gives training for it today. Well, they love the Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball creator, whose name is Akira. So, while some people think Akira is named after the movie, it is in fact actually after the creator of Dragon Ball. He also has a younger brother, which gives more credence to this. His brother is Krillin, obviously famous character in Dragon Ball as well. But anywho, on to the hockey. Akira didn't start hockey actually until he was 8 years old, a bit later than most guys, actually playing soccer as a goalie before that. He said he couldn't score goals, so he played goalie in soccer, and then when he transitioned over to hockey, he stuck with that and stayed in a net. He would play most of his youth and junior hockey within the SCL Tigers system over in Switzerland, playing with both the Langnau and Switzerland U15 through U20 teams. At the 2018 NHL entry draft, Schmid would be taken 136th overall in the 5th round by the New Jersey Devils. 5 days later, he would go to the Lethbridge Hurricanes of the WAHL, where they picked him in the first round of the CHL import draft. And then a month later, he agreed to a contract with Lethbridge. He went to Lethbridge for a few days before coming to New Jersey for rookie camp that year, where he played in one game in the Buffalo Rookie Tournament before he returned to Lethbridge. He played in one game there, where he allowed 7 goals on 27 shots, and a couple days later, they waived him. The next day, he was a free agent. This really caught Schmid and the Devils organization by surprise, as he was now basically in limbo. Because of the CHL's import rules, only WHL teams were eligible to claim Schmid, but since it was one game into the season, essentially, none of the other WHL clubs were looking for a goaltender, nor did they have a room for another import, because CHL teams are only allowed to dress 2 imports. Basically, if you are from outside North America or did not come here at a younger age and establish yourself with a local status, you were only allowed 2 imports per CHL team, and Schmid at this point was considered an import. So not only were no teams really looking for goalies, they literally could not have a spot to fit him otherwise. There was actually a ban on European goaltenders completely from 2013 until that ban was actually lifted. I believe it was after the 2018 season. So it was only a year later that Schmid was in the league. So, all the odds were basically stacked against him. But also, because of WHL rules, seemingly everything just not going his way, Schmid was not allowed to skate at the Lethbridge Arena. So instead, for an entire month, he worked out and he played NBA 2K and Fortnite the whole time, as he was not allowed within a professional arena to play or practice hockey. Opening night, and then eventually, between his agent, Tommy Fitz, our management group, they actually found him an opening in the North American Hockey League, a Tier 2 junior league. It's a step below the CHL and the USHL, with the Corpus Christi Ice Rays. Finally got a spot, finally able to play hockey, where after 2 games, he then was traded to the Omaha Lancers of the USHL for future considerations. So obviously Akira, after being drafted by us, had just bounced around and bounced around and bounced around. Shortly after joining the Lancers, he'd go on to play for Switzerland at the IIHF World Juniors. So again, was in North America, bounced around a whole bunch. Now he's back over playing international hockey. And by the time he returned, his team had a whole new goaltending coach. But it worked out for him because these two made quite the team, and it really took Schmid's game to the next level. Again, the following season, it got a bit complicated, as NCAA, one route he could have chosen to gone, rules, unless they made an exception for him, made it that technically because of that one game he played in Lethbridge, made him ineligible to play in the NCAA. Now, he could try and enter the CHL draft and get acquired by a team there. He could take the long shot route of trying to make the Devils roster straight up, or the option he ended up going with was spending another year in Omaha, which after a partial season there, he ended up getting moved again to the Sioux City Musketeers, where he would play the remainder of that 2019-20 season, and then would also play the entirety of the next season. I think the first year basically in his amateur pro career that he was not moving around, as he did play the entire 2020-21 season with the Sioux City Musketeers. Finally, May 17th, 2021, Schmid would sign his ELC with the Devils. He would go on to make NHL history on December 11th, 2021, as he would be the first goalie to debut in the NHL straight out of the USHL, where he did eventually lose that game to the New York Islanders. He would get into 6 NHL games that season, not posting the best of your baseline goalie stats, with a 4.83 goals against average and an .833 save percentage, not winning a single one of those 6 games. The rest of that time, he would be in Utica, getting 38 games in, with a 2.66 goals against average and a .911 save percentage. Obviously a bit better numbers down there. And that finally brings us to this most recent season. November 10th, 2022, Schmid would record his first NHL win with an overtime victory over the Ottawa Senators. And then February 25th, 2023, he would get his first and I believe only regular season shutout, as we know what he did later on in playoffs, with a 7-0 win over the Philadelphia Flyers. Over the season, he'd split time in Utica, but ultimately would get into 18 regular season NHL games, posting much better stats this time around with a 2.13 goals against average and a .922 save percentage. But we all know the real story came in playoffs. He would come in relief and ultimately steal the starting position, where he would get into a total of 9 games with a .235 goals against average and a .921 save percentage. I believe he was over a .95 save percentage for the entirety of the first round, obviously dropping off a bit in the second. Where, essentially he saved the Devils' playoff run. He basically, if not the reason, was a big reason why we won that first round. And then, as we know, had a bit of a rougher go at it in the second. Split starts with Vanacek. We can talk to our Blue about exactly the goalie starts for that one and what you may or may not agree with. But overall, he clearly had a rougher series in Carolina. That's just because they were clearly a much superior team to New York. But even in those losses, he looked phenomenal, especially in the eventual series losing game, where he had amazing stats, and really we could have pulled that one out for him. But overall, it was quite the journey for Schmid getting to where he was when he was drafted to where he is now as a Devil. So, on the ice, well, we saw it. He plays a calm, simple game where he just allows his size and athleticism to do the work for him. It's thanks to that size that he focuses on staying positionally sound and minimizing movement, so shooters don't really have much of a read on him and where he is or isn't giving them much holes. He also has a strong glove side where he does tend to lead shooters to try and pick a corner, but then he'll flourish his glove and shut that down as well, really closing off most options for most guys on a game. He's really today's prototypical modern goalie, as he has the size and positional play, but really his standout that differentiates the other guys that play with the same style is just how calm he remains in net. Off the ice, well, like I mentioned earlier, we know he likes his video games, and he'll also hang out with his fellow countrymen, like Nico, who took him out for dinner in his rookie year, and all of that good stuff. He is quickly becoming a fan favorite here, and if he's with the big club full time this season, I'm sure we'll get to know his personality and interests a lot more as the year goes on. So, going forward, we know management's been interested in acquiring another goalie, and that was the plan along with Schmid to at least start out in Utica. So we'll see how that continues to progress, as it does look like we will not be acquiring another goalie at this point, although things obviously can always change. If he were to make and stick with the big club for the whole year, my assumption is he'll be splitting time with VTech until one of them absolutely establishes themselves as a starter, and even then I think it'll be a fairly even split, because as we saw with VTech, I think there was a bit of burnout come playoffs just with the number of games he did start, especially at the end of the season. For Schmid, it's kind of the same thing. I think workload is the next big hurdle for him to clear, given the craziness of the NHL and travel schedule. It's going to be the most grueling for him yet in his career. And you don't really want to burn these young guys out. We saw with Vegas, having a young, rested goalie being able to come in for playoffs pays a lot of dividends. So I think that's the plan with Schmid. We'll just see how exactly that ends up playing out. He's still very young at 23, so he's really just entering his prime as a goalie with plenty of runway. So really, this is the start of it for him. We still have a couple years to really see what he'll develop into. So the sky's the limit for this kid. If he's as good consistently across the board and can handle an NHL workload, playing like he did in playoffs, his age lines up with our core so perfectly that it sets us up for such a long time to come that the only concern any pundit or anyone outside of the Devils, I mean, even within the fandom, will say our problem is just that bona fide goalie. And if Schmid can be that, boy, oh boy, are we set up for a long time to come. So top three. A little vague here because basically the number one on this list is where all the big moments came from. But three, I'm just going to say it's going to be this past season's strong regular season. We had those 6 games with him the previous year that weren't the absolute best. But it was this season that really showed, hey, there is something here. There's potentially a long-term piece here in Akira Schmid. And he just across the board had some amazing games, especially coming in at number 2. Is going to be a sprawling glove save that he had versus the Lightning. I mean, he came from one side of the net completely across the other. The reason I chose this play in particular is because we know what he is positionally. He is basically a wall in net. Stand, sound, does not give you up much. But when you can get those kind of goalies moving side to side and having to make sporadic saves, that's usually where you can get them. So it was this save in particular where he dove across the net and made a glove save that stuck out to me because it shows, hey, he has the athleticism too to be able to make those type of plays when he is on the rare caught out of position. And finally, obviously coming in at number 1, I'm just saying playoffs as a whole. I mean, we know what he did in the Rangers series. We had multiple shutouts. He was an beyond stud. I mean, we're talking almost Dominik Hasek type level of play in that first round. It did come back down to earth a little bit in the second round outside of the series ending game, where he, again, was absolutely phenomenal. But, man, oh, man. For me, the play that sticks out the most in my mind, I think, outside of, oh, boy, maybe the first win, where it's actually similar. It was the first win and the fourth win of the series, where it was both on power plays, where he made these flashy glove saves, especially the one in Game 7 sticks out, where he completely stopped a Zibanejad snipe with, like I said, giving up the top corner, making you think you have it, and then flashing the glove to save it. Once he had that save in Game 7 early, I think it was the first period, against Zibanejad on the power play. I knew the game was a lock. I just knew we had it won. Schmid was locked in. He wasn't going to give up a thing. And just that whole run was magical. Something we'll probably always remember as Devils fans. I'm positive going forward we're going to make even more playoff memories. So I can't wait to add those to these lists. But yeah, Schmid, I know there's a lot of expectations now on you. I wouldn't take it too much. Just do what you're doing. You're still young. Keep developing. It'll happen as it happens. This team's going to be young and good for a long time. So, yeah, a lot to look forward. As always, I say that a lot with a lot of these guys, but hey, that's just the team we have. But that's going to do it. It's a Monday morning. I hope everybody makes it through a Monday work day as best as you can. I will see everyone again tomorrow morning. As always, and forever, let's go Devils.